Presumptive president candidate Kamala Harris and Trump targeted each other, attacking verbally, accusing, abusing each other. Good morning. Welcome to Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Budnam. I am thankful to all international news resources and my team. I am also thankful to all American, European, Canadian, Australian, Asian, African channels and AP, AFP and Reuters news agencies. Now watch the channels. Rather, headlines. On campaign trails. Wildfires in Northern California and Canadian Rockies in Alberta province. 25,000 people freed from Jasper National Park destroyed. Inauguration ceremony of Paris Olympics will take today. Israeli Prime Minister met with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. On Wall Street, Nasdaq down, S&P 500 increase and Dow Jones Industrial down. Canadian coach used drone to spy on New Zealand team. Israeli bombing and killing in Gaza is continuing. Extremely tight security for Paris Olympics. Now watch the channels.
Tonight, several breaking stories as we come on the air. Homes burned to the ground, the evacuations, the raging wildfire. Did someone push a flaming vehicle down an embankment to start this fire? A suspect under arrest at this hour. Also tonight, the images just coming in. Vice President Kamala Harris meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu amid strained relations over Netanyahu's handling of the war. First tonight, the images coming in now. The fast-moving park fire in Northern California. Homes exploding in flames. One community's road out, lined by the flames. Authorities tonight say the fire was deliberately set Kana Whitworth in California. Just moments ago, Vice President Kamala Harris meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu amid tension over Netanyahu's handling of that war. President Biden and Netanyahu meeting in the Oval Office earlier today. Netanyahu thanking the president for his support, even amid a strained relationship. And the president urging Netanyahu to accept the ceasefire deal on the table and bring the remaining hostages home. Mary Bruce at the White House. The race for president tonight, Vice President Harris in Texas, the American Federation of Teachers endorsing her. Harris pushing back against Donald Trump's insults, telling him to bring it on. Trump already telling supporters, I'm not going to be nice. And tonight, his running mate, J.D. Vance, under new scrutiny for past comments about people who don't have children. Dramatic images off the coast of Alaska. For the first time, the U.S. and Canadian fighter jets intercepting 2 Russian and 2 Chinese bombers. The incident raising concerns about the growing cooperation between Russia and China. Back in the U.S. tonight, the images coming in late today, video showing a small plane crashing in Bar Harbor, Maine. The plane going down in heavy fog at the end of a runway, exploding into flames. Tonight, Southwest Airlines revealing a major change for passengers, ending a 53-year-old tradition. New reports about Celine Dion's possible comeback at the Paris Olympics. We've now learned who she may be performing with and what they will likely sing. And here in New York tonight, after his record-breaking 10-year residency and 150 shows, Billy Joel taking a final bow at Madison Square Garden.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, and we begin tonight with the breaking news. This explosive wildfire burning many homes to the ground and forcing thousands from their homes at this hour, burning 4,000 acres an hour at this point. The Park Fire near Chico, California, about 100 miles north of Sacramento. Look at the pictures. Erupting just 24 hours ago tonight, already burning 71,000 acres. And at this hour, police say this was no act of nature. A man is under arrest for arson. Did he push a vehicle in flames down an embankment, unleashing this fire? The moment one home explodes, it could not be saved. And time-lapse tonight from a wildfire camera, the fire taking over a communications tower, knocking that camera offline. More than 4,000 people forced from their homes. A witness telling authorities that she saw a man set this vehicle on fire and then roll it down a hill. Authorities have made an arrest tonight. Now, of course, the winds fueling these flames, and ABC's Kana Whitworth leading us off from California.
Tonight, homes exploding in flames as firefighters north of Sacramento desperately battle a monster inferno. The Park Fire.
We're not cut off yet. We're good, but the heat is insane.
Outside the town of Cohasset, terrifying scenes on the tiny town's main road.
I'm completely surrounded right now, so I'm actually gonna bone out of here and see if I can get ahead of this thing, because I'm gonna end up getting caught.
Multiple large homes and structures engulfed, gas tanks violently flaring as high as the trees. Nearly 4,000 fleeing their homes, but some were trapped, forced to shelter in place.
We've got approximately 100 vehicles that are sheltering at the radio towers on Cohasset Road with fire department personnel.
Flames breaking out Wednesday afternoon in a park outside of Chico, California, burning 4,000 acres an hour. By daybreak, scorching more than 70,000 acres and an unknown number of homes.
this fire grew very, very quickly. It got really big, really fast.
How hard is that on your firefighters when something goes like that?
It is. It presents a lot of different challenges.
The fire deliberately set, according to authorities, who are aware of this video posted to TikTok by someone who says they saw it happen.
I watched the guy blow up his car and then put it in neutral and roll it down the hill and take off like nothing happened.
Police arresting a 42-year-old man and say this is the vehicle pushed down the embankment that started the fire.
And David, all of a sudden there was a shift in the wind out here and the fire just raced down this hill and it is torching the entire area there behind me. This shifting wind is incredibly challenging for firefighters. In fact, they were forced to open logging roads just so people could evacuate. And now, David, we are under a red flag warning in this area.
Just incredible pictures tonight. Kano Whitworth in
सिर्फ 20 सेकंड की वीडियो आपने देखनी है। ऑफर अगर आपको पसंद आए तो आपने हमें फॉलो करना है। ऑफर पसंद ना आए
Thank you. The breaking headline, meantime, from Washington, D.C. Just moments ago, Vice President Kamala Harris meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu amid tensions over Netanyahu's handling of that war. President Biden and Netanyahu meeting in the Oval Office earlier today, Netanyahu thanking the president for his support, even amid this strained relationship. President urging Netanyahu to accept the ceasefire deal on the table and the remaining hostages.
Tonight, President Kamala Democratic nominee Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Welcome, Mr. Prime Minister, and for the conversation we left.
Face-to-face amid growing tension in recent weeks over Netanyahu's handling of the war, the administration urging the prime minister to accept the ceasefire deal on the table and bring the remaining hostages home. Moments ago, the vice president coming before cameras.
I've said it many times, but it bears repeating. Israel has a right to defend itself, and how it does so matters.
Earlier, the prime minister also sitting down with President Biden in the Oval Office.
I think we should get to it.
Nearly 10 months into this relationship between the leaders strained, Netanyahu praising Biden for his support.
So from a proud Jewish Zionist to a proud Irish-American Zionist, I want to thank you for 50 years of public service and 50 years of support for the state of Israel.
The White House tonight says the ceasefire deal is closable. President Biden making it a top priority of his remaining months in office.
And I'm going to keep working to end the war in Gaza, bring home all the hostages, and bring peace to the Middle East and end this war.
It's been 2 months since the president shared publicly the details of the three-part proposal to bring home the hostages and end the war. Today's meetings coming as overnight Israeli forces recovered from Gaza. Also at the White House today, the fate of Americans being held hostage, sitting down with the president and prime minister.
We met today.
Jonathan Deckelhen, whose son, 35-year-old Sagi, is still being held by Hamas, describing their discussion as productive and honest.
We got absolute commitment from the Biden administration and from Prime Minister Netanyahu that they understand the urgency of this bill as it stands with as little change as humanly possible.
And the vice president speaking just moments ago, also with a message to Americans who are demanding a ceasefire, saying, I hear you, and let's get this deal on. David Knight Harris also rating her commitment to the solution. David.
Mary, thank you. In the race for the White House, Vice President Harris was also in Texas earlier today. The American Federation of Teachers endorsing her, and Harris pushing back against Donald Trump's insults, telling him to bring it on. Tonight, Donald Trump telling his supporters, I'm not going to be nice. And Trump's running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, tonight under new scrutiny for past comments about people who don't have children. Here's Selena Wang.
Tonight, Vice President Kamala Harris accepting the endorsement of the American Federation of Teachers in Houston, sounding her campaign's defining theme that this election is a fight for freedom.
In this moment, we are in a fight for our most fundamental freedoms. And to this room of leaders, I say, bring it on.
Harris sharpening her attacks on Donald Trump as an enemy of the middle class.
Donald Trump and his extreme allies want to take our nation back to failed trickle-down economic policies, back to union busting, back to tax breaks for billionaires.
Trump, who had counted on running against Joe Biden, now testing new attack lines on Harris, whose name he continues to mispronounce.
This November, the American people are going to tell her, no thanks, Kamala, you've done a terrible job.
Trump abandoning his pledge, post-assassination attempt to unite the country.
When you're dealing with these people, they're very dangerous people. When you're dealing with them, you can't be too nice. You really can't be. So if you don't mind, I'm not going to be nice. Is that okay?
But tonight, new scrutiny for Trump's running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, and his 2021 comments disparaging Harris for not having children.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children.
Tonight, actress Jennifer Aniston sharing Vance's comments with her 44 million Instagram followers, writing, I truly can't believe this is coming from a potential VP of the United States. And the former wife of Harris's husband, Doug Emhoff, coming to her defense, noting that Harris co-parents their 2 children. Kirsten Emhoff writing, for over 10 years since Cole and Ella were teenagers, Kamala has been a co-parent with Doug and I. She is loving, nurturing, fiercely protective, and always present. I love our blended family and am grateful to have her in it. Ella Emhoff adding, how can you be childless when you have cutie pie kids like Cole and I? I love my 3 parents. And tonight, the Harris campaign highlighting Vance's statement 3 years ago, suggesting that parents should be given extra votes in elections.
When you go to the polls in this country as a parent, You should have more power. You should have more of an ability to speak your voice in our democratic republic than people who don't have kids. Let's face the consequences and the reality. If you don't have as much of an investment in the future of this country, maybe you shouldn't get nearly the same voice. Well, doesn't this mean that non-parents don't have as much of a voice as parents? Doesn't this mean that parents get a bigger say in how our democracy functions? Yes, absolutely.
Tonight, Trump standing by Vance.
He's for the worker. No, he's great. He's doing a great job, and he's been very well received.
As Harris says she's ready to meet Trump face to face, accepting the September 10th debate on ABC News that Trump and President Biden had already agreed to.
I'm ready, and I think the voters deserve to see the split screen that exists in this race on a debate stage, and so I'm ready. Let's go.
And David, new polling out tonight from the New York Times shows just how much this race has tightened since President Biden dropped out. It is now a virtual tie, showing that Harris and Trump are now separated by just 1 point among likely voters nationwide. And this is just one of several major polls, all showing just how much closer this race has gotten since Harris became the presumptive Democratic nominee. David?
Selena Wang tonight with us as well. Thank you, Selena. We're going to turn now to the dramatic images off the coast of Alaska. For the first time, U.S. and Canadian fighter jets intercepting 2 Russian and 2 Chinese bombers. The incident raising concerns about the growing cooperation between Russia and China. Here's Martha Raddatz.
It was a bold, provocative, and unprecedented move, clearly meant to send a message to America. For the first time ever, Russia and China conducting joint patrol exercises in international airspace off the coast of Alaska, and providing these videos to prove it. Launching in darkness from the same Russian base, 2 Chinese and 2 Russian unarmed but nuclear-capable strategic bombers aerially refueling over the Pacific as the U.S. military tracked them all the way. An array of armed American and Canadian fighter jets scrambling and then intercepting the bombers as they came within 200 miles of Alaska. This is the view from the U.S. aircraft provided by the Pentagon. This is the view from the Russian cockpit of the U.S. fighter jets and also the Chinese bombers.
It's the first time that we've seen these 2 countries fly together like that. They're always testing us, and that's no surprise to any of us.
The U.S. jets followed the Chinese and Russian aircraft for nearly an hour before the bombers returned to their bases. Pentagon officials say they were not surprised by the joint exercises, but the Russians and Chinese made no secret of this mission. They want to reinforce not only their military might, but the partnership that grows deeper every day. David?
Yeah, that's quite something, Martha Raddatz. Thank you, Martha. Now to the unsettling headline from Paris tonight. There are reports a Russian suspect is under arrest for an alleged plot on the eve of the Olympics there in Paris. Have authorities foiled an alleged Russian plot? Our foreign correspondent James Longman now from Paris.
On the eve of the opening ceremony, authorities tonight say they've foiled an alleged Russian plot to disrupt the Summer Games in Paris. A Cordon Bleu-trained chef is reportedly under arrest for trying to provoke hostilities in France. Though French officials haven't identified the suspect, a joint investigation by France's Le Monde, Germany's Der Spiegel, and the Russia-focused The Insider identified him as 40-year-old Kirill Gryazhnov.
He is an FSB officer, which is a Russian intelligence officer who spent 14 years living in France, posing as a chef. He cooked at Michelin star restaurants.
And tonight, facing international outcry over the war in Gaza, Israel accusing Iran of trying to intimidate Israel's Olympic team. They claim 15 athletes received death threats by email and phone, with imagery echoing the horrific 1972 attack at the Munich Games. Here in Paris, security on high alert.
There is a massive security operation here in Paris. Thousands of these barriers line these streets. They create a maze of checkpoints around some of the world's most famous landmarks. Some 75,000 police, soldiers and guards have been drafted in. This is the largest mobilization in peacetime in this country. 300,000 people have tickets for the opening ceremony. A no-fly zone of more than 90 miles will span all around Paris. France is not taking any chances. David?
All right, James Longman in Paris to cover the Olympics for us. Thank you, James. To the economy here at home tonight, a new report on growth of the U.S. surpassing expectations tonight. The nation's output of goods and services, the GDP, growing 2.8% in the second quarter of this year. Consumers and businesses both spending more as inflation now cools, and with Fed Chair Jerome Powell recently hinting a rate cut could be coming now. When we come back here tonight, the images coming in late today, the deadly small plane crash at an airport in the Northeast in heavy fog, 2 dead. The images here in a moment. And later tonight here, the new reports about Celine Dion's potential comeback at the Paris Olympics and who she could be performing with. We'll have more on that in a moment. Tonight, first responders are on the scene of a deadly plane crash in Bar Harbor, Maine. Authorities say the plane flying out of Morris County, New Jersey, crashed in heavy fog at the end of the runway. 2 people on board, the pilot and passenger, were both killed. The investigation underway tonight. When we come back here, the major change for passengers flying Southwest Airlines for the first time in more than 50 years. And we take you to Madison Square Garden here in New York City, Billy Joel's final night of his decade-long residency. Bittersweet. To the index of other news tonight, Southwest Airlines ending a 53-year tradition, eliminating its open seat policy, rolling out assigned seating beginning next year. Southwest tonight saying 80% of its passengers prefer assigned seating. New signs tonight pointing to Celine Dion's reported comeback at the opening ceremony of the Paris Olympics. New reports tonight suggest she might be performing with Lady Gaga. The two are expected to sing La Vie en Rose, which Lady Gaga, of course, sang in A Star is Born. Celine Dion, who stopped performing after being diagnosed with stiff person syndrome, is posting pictures of herself in Paris saying she is so happy to be back. Stay tuned on that front. When we come back tonight, after a record run, Billy Joel's farewell tonight, we'll take you to Madison Square Garden. Finally tonight here, it was 1978, his first performance at Madison Square Garden. Tonight, Billy Joel takes a final bow after his decade-long residency. Tonight in New York City at Madison Square Garden, Billy Joel and the History Made. Billy Joel ending his unprecedented decade-long residency. 10 years tonight is his 150th show there, the most of any performer ever. More than 2 million people coming to see him over the years.
Welcome to Madison Square Garden, Universe.
This is amazing. This is so far beyond anything I ever imagined.
It was 1978, nearly 50 years ago, when Billy Joel first performed at Madison Square Garden. His residency then beginning in 2014.
When you play the Garden, the whole world knows about it. This was the center of the universe. So it was a thrill.
Tonight, the brand new public exhibit opening there, Billy Joel's original set list, his Ray-Ban sunglasses, and along the way, the incredible moments, the crowd sing-alongs. His daughter Alexa Ray on stage for a duet.
I'm in a New York state.
That surprise reunion just weeks ago. Billy Joel singing Uptown Girl, and up on that big screen, Christy Brinkley, his ex-wife, who inspired that song. Tonight, the final sold-out show, The Piano Man, at the end of a record-breaking era.
Every time you play the Garden, it's one of those, great gigs. Whether you played there 50 times before or not, it's just fun to be able to play the Garden.
It's going to be quite a night for The Piano Man. I'm David Muir. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Good night.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Muir, America's most...
Good evening. I'm Jeff Bennett. Amna Nawaz is away. On the NewsHour tonight, the new presidential matchup takes shape, with Vice President Kamala Harris trying to rally support from key voting blocs, and former President Trump sharpening his attacks. Israel's Prime Minister sits down with President Biden. How the families of hostages view Netanyahu's controversial visit to the U.S. And we continue our look at what's behind the troubling rise in suicides among young Black Americans.
One of the main questions I'm asked is, how do I find a therapist? How do I find a clinician? How do I find a Black clinician in this area? There's a great need to ensure that there's enough providers available to service all those who are in need.
Welcome to the NewsHour. Vice President Kamala Harris was in Houston today, honing her campaign message one day after President Biden explained why he exited the presidential race. Harris's likely nomination has former President Donald Trump and his team racing to shift their strategy following Mr. Biden's withdrawal. Our Laura Barone Lopez has more. And we start the day's other headlines in the western U.S. and Canada, where emergency crews are racing to tame hundreds of wildfires. Two of the hardest hit areas are California and Alberta, Canada, while the largest active fire in the U.S. late Wednesday was in Oregon. But a thunderstorm today brought some relief. In the Canadian Rockies, 25,000 people fled the town of Jasper before a nearby fire tore through the area. Officials are still assessing the damage, but estimate that up to half of the popular tourist destination has been destroyed.
Right now, the wildfire is still out of control, and crews are working in dangerous conditions to try and protect critical infrastructure in the town. And to those in Alberta and around the world who have experienced the magic of Jasper, the magic is not lost, and it never will be.
Meantime, prosecutors in Northern California have arrested a man for allegedly starting the state's largest wildfire of the year by pushing a burning car into a gully. The park fire has burned more than 70 square miles near the city of Chico. The death toll from Hurricane Beryl has risen to at least 36 in the state of Texas. Fort Bend County officials announced 9 new fatalities today, saying power outages and heat-related causes were at least partially to blame for some of the deaths. At the peak of the outages, nearly 3 million Texans were without electricity. A typhoon slammed into China's southeastern coast today. Earlier in the week, it hit the Philippines, killing at least 22 people. The storm brewed up rough seas, sinking an oil tanker in Manila Bay and sparking concerns of a potential oil spill. The typhoon then moved on to Taiwan. 3 people have died there so far, and at least 380 were injured. One restaurant owner said the storm had taken everything from her.
I don't know how. It's bad. We have to tear it all down. My mood, I can't talk about it anymore because I have a bad heart. I'm going to faint if I go on.
More than 240,000 residents were evacuated from China's Fujian province ahead of the storm. It's expected to weaken as it moves inland, but will bring heavy rain over the next few days. A former Uvalde school police officer has pleaded not guilty to charges that he failed to take action while 19 children and 2 teachers were killed in a mass shooting back in 2022. Adrian Gonzalez made his first court appearance today to face 29 counts of abandoning and endangering children. Each charge could carry up to 2 years in prison. Gonzalez was among the first of nearly 400 officers to arrive on the scene at Robb Elementary School, but then waited for more than 70 minutes to confront the shooter. California Governor Gavin Newsom today directed state officials to start dismantling thousands of homeless encampments. His executive order is meant to address the tents and makeshift shelters that line California's streets, freeways, and parks. But the measure leaves the actual enforcement of such removals to local officials. The order is the nation's most sweeping response to a Supreme Court decision in June that allows cities to enforce bans on sleeping in public. The U.S. economy grew at a healthy clip last quarter. Commerce Department data out today showed that GDP rose 2.8% during the April to June period compared to last year. That was better than expected and double the growth we saw in the quarter before. Separately, weekly jobless claims fell last week by 10,000, which was more than expected. Overall, layoffs remain low by historical standards. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, who is abroad in Brazil meeting with her G20 counterparts, also noted that inflation keeps inching in the right direction.
Inflation is down significantly from its peak, trending towards the Federal Reserve's target. Our administration recognizes that prices are still too high for many Americans.
Fed officials have signaled that they are prepared to start cutting interest rates as soon as September if inflation keeps trending down. On Wall Street today, stocks failed to shake off their recent troubles. The Dow Jones Industrial Average managed a slight gain, adding about 80 points, but the Nasdaq dropped more than 160 points as tech shares continued to struggle. The S&P 500 also ended lower on the day. And a passing of note. Martin Indyk, the renowned diplomat who spent decades trying to bring peace to the Middle East, has died from complications due to cancer. Indyk served as U.S. ambassador to Israel twice during the Clinton years and later as a special envoy under President Barack Obama. He pushed for a two-state solution to resolve the long-standing conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. It was a dilemma he described on the NewsHour a decade ago as existential.
The demographic dynamic is such that Israel will sooner rather than later have to choose between being a Jewish state, because there will be a minority of Jews in the area that Israel controls, and being a democratic state. And that's a choice that Israel should never want to have to make.
Diplomat, author, and friend of this program, Martin Indyk was 73 years old. Still to come on the NewsHour, how a lack of mental health care is contributing to a troubling trend among young Black Americans. A look at recent turbulence in the airline industry. And an art exhibit explores how South Korean culture is changing the world.
Almost every block had at least one fully engulfed.
Parts of a Canadian jewel unrecognizable this Thursday night.
And to those in Alberta and around the world who have experienced the magic of Jasper, the magic is not lost and it never will be.
The immense losses and the ongoing fight to save what's left of a national treasure.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. There was no way to hold back the flames. Last night, wildfires whipping through Jasper National Park were on the edge of the town of Jasper. Fire crews say it was a monster. And this is what it did. The flames, they say, moved 5 kilometers in less than an hour. Parts of the beloved mountain town in the heart of the Rocky Mountains is in ashes. There are no reports of deaths or injuries. About 25,000 people had fled the park earlier this week. But Alberta's premier says it's believed 30 to 50% of the structures in town are damaged.
The wildfire is still out of control, and crews are working in dangerous conditions to try and protect critical infrastructure in the town. So to the brave men and women currently on the ground in Jasper, I want to express my deep gratitude and the gratitude of all Albertans.
I speak to you today with profound sorrow as our community begins to come to terms with the death
There's nothing like coming face to face with a grizzly bent on attack and surviving. A woman in Yukon now recounting a frightening encounter and how she survived. CTV's Sarah Plowman is here. And Sarah, what an experience that must have been.
Sandy, you never know when a hair clip will come in handy. The woman who survived this attack on June 30th thinks that's what helped her.
It was along this trail where Vanessa Chaput and her dog Luna faced 3 grizzly bears.
I was right beside them, and it was too close. There was no way.
She tried to give them space as Luna chased off 2. One bear attacked her.
When the bear had taken me down with my head in its mouth, my first thought was just kind of protect your vitals. So I went straight into the fetal position. My saving grace was from Walmart.
A plastic hair clip like this atop her head that she says snapped in the bear's mouth. That's when the bear let her go. Chaput believes the bear was stunned.
And I was able.
She hid behind a tree. The bear charged again. Luna distracted it.
If it wasn't for my dog barking, the bear was going to come finish the job.
She headed to the highway, called her husband and 911, bloodied and injured.
So I have puncture wounds all up in my arm. I have a broken bone. I have a lot of nerve damage in that area. And then my tricep was torn into places.
Chaput spent weeks in hospital but holds no hard feelings.
I don't blame the bears for what happened. I don't blame my dog or myself. It was wrong place, wrong time, and
welcome to Hannity. And tonight, extremism and bigotry is festering inside the Democratic Party. Far-left individuals who hate our country, our way of life. They are desecrating our flag, vandalizing our monuments, and openly supporting Hamas, a terrorist organization. In response, the Biden-Harris administration can barely muster a yawn. Joe, as per usual, is barely able to get through the day. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party's newly anointed presidential nominee, Kamala Harris, summoned just enough courage to release a written statement politely condemning the pro-Hamas riots, the people burning our flags and so on and so forth. But don't expect any big virtuous speeches condemning this extremism. You see, Kamala does not have the moral courage to call out her own radical side. She supported that after the policing down in Minneapolis. We tweeted out for a health fund after the precinct down. Now, this honeymoon and the high in the days after Kamala's election, Paul found the Brazil and key around state owner. Trump is up to all glow from state. Harris is struggling to hide her radical record. And by the way, on this show, our vetting has only begun. Now, today, House Democrats were sent this memo begging them to pretend that Kamala's border czar title was invented out of nowhere by Republicans. The document goes on to detail how Kamala really wasn't involved with the border, even though she was second in command at the Biden administration for the past 3 years and was specifically tasked with preventing illegal immigrants from several different countries.
Mom and Dad's house.
Devastating scenes of destruction inside the historic town site of Jasper, Alberta. Homes leveled, cars burnt to shells. We're just down the highway to the entrance to Jasper National Park, where tonight fires are still burning. Overnight, a wall of flames 100 meters high, moving kilometers in just minutes.
Flames started getting closer and trees are starting to burn, grass is on fire.
A national treasure in Canada's Rockies, forever changed.
We share the sense of loss with all of those who live in the town.
The damage, the determination to rebuild.
Tonight, here in Paris, on the eve of the Olympic Games, a cheating scandal hangs over Team Canada.
And there is the whistle.
A win on the pitch, but off, questions swirl.
No matter how they perform this Olympics, as defending gold medalists, they've lost.
And later, how the planning for these games started amidst tragedy.
We have to move on. We can't let terrorists or terrorism win.
The pride and resilience of Paris.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrian Arsenault and Ian.
I'm ready to debate Donald Trump. I have agreed to the previously agreed upon September 10th debate. He agreed to that previously. Now it appears he's backpedaling, but I'm ready. And I think the voters deserve to see the split screen that exists in this race on a debate stage. And so I'm ready. Let's go.
Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are taking direct aim at each other as the presidential race enters its post-Biden phase. I'm Valerie Castro in for Gotti Schwartz, and this is Stay Tuned Now. We are 103 days away from the November election, and things are just starting to heat up. Today, Harris released her first campaign ad.
There are some people who think we should be a country of chaos, of fear, of hate. But us, we choose something different. We choose freedom.
She also delivered the keynote address to thousands of members of the most powerful teachers union in the country over in Texas.
Donald Trump and his extreme allies want to take our nation back to failed trickle-down economic policies. We are not going back. We are not going back.
Also, NBC News learned that former President Barack Obama is getting ready to endorse Harris for president soon, giving her that last big missing piece as she takes over the Democratic Party. And about that VP pick, NBC News can confirm that the campaign has requested vetting materials from these 5 candidates. There doesn't appear to be any real front runner at the moment, but we can report that Republicans see Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro as a, quote, super strong VP contender. NBC's Yamiche Alcindor has more on all of it.
Well, it was another busy day for
Tonight, we're live from Paris as the history-making 2024 Olympic Games gets underway. More than 10,000 athletes from across the globe converging in France's capital to compete on the world stage. The opening ceremony promises to be unlike anything we've seen before. Floats set to parade down the famous River Seine, the city's most iconic landmarks transformed into sports venues. Some American teams already in action, and gymnast Simone Biles giving us a preview of what's to come. Excitement filling the cobblestone streets as anticipation builds on the eve of the Olympic Games. Also tonight, protecting Paris. France preparing for its biggest security operation in the country's history. Helicopters circling the city, snipers on roofs, and divers in the water. The massive challenge of securing the opening ceremony. The region on high alert as police foil plots against the Games. Harris takes center stage. Vice President Kamala Harris meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, calling for a ceasefire deal after a day on the campaign trail. Former President Trump blasting Harris as he reverts to his old tactics. Will the two meet on a debate stage? And the new battleground polling showing a tightening race. Raging wildfires out west, thousands forced to flee their homes as flames close in. A California man in custody accused of igniting the state's largest wildfire of the year. In Canada, a fire burning out of control, ravaging a historic tourist town. The air quality concerns as smoke pushes into the central U.S. Gucci goddess sentenced, a woman accused of stealing more than $100 million from military families to purchase designer goods learns her fate, the jail time she now faces after splurging on luxury cars and properties. Plus, the Seine on stage, the river at the heart of Paris on full display at this year's Olympics. But it's the city's rich history that flows through its banks. Our Keir Simmons finds out what makes it the perfect place to kick off the Summer Games, even testing the water himself. And an expert is right here to tell us the chances the U.S. men's team has of winning gold with some tougher competition in basketball. Top story.
Bring it on.
Tonight, Vice President Kamala Harris fights back.
I'm ready to debate Donald Trump, and I think the voters deserve to see the split screen that exists in this race on a debate stage.
And makes the appeal to young voters.
I'm very excited to see this energy.
On a debate stage.
And makes the appeal to young voters.
I'm very excited to see this energy.
After Donald Trump spoke out last night at his first rally since she announced her presidential bid.
Now we have a new victim to defeat, Lion Kamala Harris, the most incompetent and far-left vice president in American history.
The CBS Evening News starts now. Good evening. Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for being with us. Vice President Kamala Harris is on the cusp of getting an endorsement from one of the biggest names in American politics. We'll get to that in just a moment, but we do want to start with the breaking news about a major wildfire in California. The incredible pictures just coming in showing intense flames devouring buildings, cars, anything in its way near Chico, that is north of Sacramento. And tonight, investigators say all of this destruction was caused by a suspected arsonist who has now been charged with causing the state's largest wildfire so far this year. CBS's Jonathan Vigliotti is in Northern California and spoke to
tonight, international and national reinforcements as the Canadian treasure is scorched. The jarring and devastating scenes in Jasper.
Probably the worst day of our lives.
Homes and history destroyed.
Those of us who experience Jasper as visitors can't imagine what it feels like.
Our full team coverage of the unfolding disaster. Exclusive new details about how often Canada has used drones to spy on opponents as the head coach of the women's soccer team is booted from the Olympics, hours after players score a victory against New Zealand. Plus, part 2 of our CTV News investigation, the criminal companies setting up shop here at home.
Canada is open for business for the worst people.
Also, Loblaw's $500 million penalty over a price-fixing scheme. And a woman survives a terrifying confrontation with a grizzly.
When the bear had taken me down with my head in its mouth, my first thought was just kind of protect your vitals.
How a hair accessory helped fend off an attack.
For your window on the world. Liberté, égalité, actualité.
Welcome to Daybreak here on France 24. Here are this morning's main news headlines. All eyes on Paris as the French capital prepares to host what's set to be a spectacular Olympic Games opening ceremony. Thousands of athletes will cruise down the River Seine, watched on by more than 325,000 spectators. Ready to go, says Kamala Harris, as she launches during a time her rival has extremist Republicans. Meanwhile, we're going to debate until she's officially named Democratic. And entire streets have been left as firefighters battle to contain a fast-moving blaze in the Canadian Rockies. Local officials there say up to half the historic town of Jasper has been destroyed. Good to have you with us. Well, it's set to showcase the best France's cultural heritage. Up to 2 billion people in the world will be watching on as Paris hosts an unprecedented and high-risk Olympics opening ceremony.
Brazil rallies G20 countries to step up efforts to end hunger and inequality. As food security gains begin to reverse. Brazil's president unveiled a global alliance against hunger and poverty in Rio de Janeiro on Wednesday. The initiative is one of Brazil's top priorities. As president of the G20. The alliance aims to implement a
The death toll from the 3 successive landslide incidents in the South Ethiopia region has risen to 257 as of July 24th, according to local authorities. On the previous day, 157 people were confirmed dead. According to the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, the government is finalizing an evacuation plan. More than 15,000 people have been affected and need to be evacuated. Amongst them are at least 1,320 children under 5 and 5,293 pregnant and breastfeeding women. The Regional Health Bureau has deployed 2 cars and medical supplies to the scene. Agencies are allocating financial and in-kind resources for the emergent.
Preparations are underway in Central African Republic for local elections due to take place in October for the first time in over 36 years. And MINUSCA, the country's United Nations mission, is providing multifaceted support, a key provision of the political agreement for peace and reconciliation. Operations to review the electoral register
on ABC TV and ABC iView.
Today, former New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian fails to overturn the corruption finding against her. Israel's Prime Minister urged to finalise a Gaza ceasefire in meetings with the US President and VP Kamala Harris. The co-founder of Mexico's powerful Sinaloa cartel and the son of El Chapo Guzman, both arrested in Texas. And the head coach of Canada's women's soccer team sent home from the Paris Games after one of her staff spied on opponents with a drone. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Catherine Robinson. Former New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian has failed to overturn findings of corrupt...
This is Asia Now.
It's 12 p.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 9:30 in New Delhi, and 11 o'clock in Jakarta. I'm Rani Samtani. At this hour, hundreds of thousands evacuated as Typhoon Gaimi slams into China's Fujian province. The powerful storm killed dozens of people in Taiwan and the Philippines.
As I just told Prime Minister Netanyahu, it is time to get this deal done.
U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris says she will not be silent on the suffering in Gaza, while telling Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to seal a peace deal. The Israeli leader also met Joe Biden as Washington tries to narrow gaps on a ceasefire. And the Monetary Authority of Singapore keeps its policy settings unchanged for the 5th straight time. But the central bank has cut its headline inflation forecast, a sign that cost of living pressures may be easing. Typhoon Gaimi has barreled into China.
Hello, good morning. It's 6 o'clock. Our top story. Protesters in Manchester block roads and tram lines as anger grows against the police.
Plus, Mel Stride becomes the latest Conservative MP to announce he's standing to lead his party. We'll hear from him later this morning.
And it's being billed as the biggest open-air show on Earth. Paris prepares for the Olympics opening ceremony.
It's Friday, the 26th of July. Coming up, Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham appeals for calm after a video shows police kicking and stamping on a man's head. The Health Secretary condemns the NHS watchdog as not fit for purpose after learning that some hospitals have not been inspected for up to a decade. One of Canada's most historic towns is devastated by wildfires. Alexander Usyk, the toughest man on the planet, tells Sky News he cries over the war in his home country.
For these people, it's lost. It's hard for me.
This is DW News, and these are our top stories. US Vice President Kamala Harris has held talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House. The talks have been closely watched for changes in tone between Harris, the presumptive Democratic nominee for president, and the incumbent Joe Biden. After the talks, Harris asked Americans not to view the Israel-Hamas conflict as a, quote, binary issue. A fast-moving wildfire has consumed much of the popular tourist town of Jasper in the Canadian Rockies. The Premier of Alberta province says as much as half the town has been damaged or destroyed. There were no immediate reports of deaths or injuries. 25,000 people have fled the flames. Typhoon Kami has slammed into mainland China, bringing strong winds and heavy rainfall through the southeastern Fujian province. Earlier, the storm left a trail of devastation across Taiwan, killing at least 3 people. Several sailors are still missing from a cargo ship that sank.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Woodman. Have a good life.